Theory number 1. Stan is not going to die by suicide after receiving that heart-pounding phone call from Mike that it has arisen again. No. He will summon the courage to return to Derry and reunite with his best friends to forge the fight against an evil that has terrorized the town of Derry since its inception. But then he'll commit suicide. My theory is that Stan will return to Derry, but that it will confront him and say or do something that terrorizes him or scares him so much, he'll then do that, Or that on his way to Derry, he'll see something or remember something that will frighten him so much he'll change his mind, want to leave, and then possibly die some other way. Might get hit by a car or a bus. In the novel and the miniseries, all the members of the Losers Club rejoice in one another's company at a Chinese restaurant. Of course, all except one. But after they go their separate ways, it's then that it confronts them personally in the form of Pennywise. And I have a feeling in the movie, if Stan does go to Derry, it'll probably be around this time that he might be the first one. If he does commit suicide, maybe it'll be because of it. It will be the cause of the suicide. Maybe he didn't want to do it, but it did intercept it and did, I don't know, it did something. And to the uninitiated, yeah, it looks like he killed himself. But of course, his friends would know otherwise. So yeah, that's my theory. Stan is still the first one to go, possibly by suicide, but that he will go to Derry. But of course, something will happen. Yeah, and that's that. My second theory is that Mike Hanlon, though he may be wise to the history of Derry, he is not a librarian, as in the book and miniseries, but he is actually working for the Derry Police Department. And it is the death of Adrian Mellon that introduces us to this information. But it is the death of a child that warns him of Pennywise's awakening, which prompts him to make those phone calls. For all I know, for all any of us really know, it could be Ben who stays behind in Derry and actually becomes a librarian. In the novel, Adrian Mellon is a young gay man who is spending the better half of his evening with his boyfriend at the Derry main town fair. And as they were beginning to leave, a group of 3 teenagers with nothing better to do with their time than verbally harass random people decided to verbally harass Adrian Mellon and his boyfriend. And this turned into a physical altercation. Real quick. The 3 teenagers brutally beat Adrian and threw his limp, half-dead body over a bridge. His boyfriend, who was defenseless to stop the attack and obviously outnumbered, stumbled down the cliff edge where the bridge was, and that is when he witnessed it, in the form of Pennywise, holding Adrian's body and eating him. It feeds off of fear, and one thing that Stephen King did very well in expanding upon in the book was how exactly an entity such as it can thrive in such a small town of Derry, a town that it practically built. A detail that, sadly but realistically or logically, could not have been as expanded upon or detailed in the movie as in the book. The ancient alien that is it feeds off of fear in just the town of Derry, Maine, because of the hate and the atrocities that result in catastrophic events that drastically alter the town's history and creates the purest form in each and every individual. And these events always happen every 27 years or so, just as it awakens out of hibernation. The way we humans vehemently interact with each other and the consequences of our actions causes fear in all of us and places us in a sunken, lowly place, a sad disposition. And once we're lost and confused and by ourselves, all it has to do is play with its food to elicit that level of fear that it desires, and then the rest is history. The death of Adrian Mellon, a catalyst to settle just an inkling of fear and doubt into the town, caused by a group of homophobic teenagers, is a perfect way to show and tell just how ignorant the town of Derry is during a period of time when acceptance of one's orientation should not be met with violence, in that it has awakened yet again to wreak havoc upon the town. And in my opinion, considering the events that have transpired in the past, both Georgie and Adrian Mellon's deaths seem tame compared to, say, the Black Spot, or the retaliation of the Bradley Gang murders, which resulted in several deaths. So, that leads me to thinking, had the Losers Club never defeated it, would an event so large, grand, and traumatic in scale had happened that would not have just affected the town of Derry, Maine? My third theory is that during whatever flashback portions happen in the second film that involve the kids, Mike Hanlon's horrific yet memorable first encounter with it will not be in the form of a giant bird, but something else entirely. Mike Hanlon's significance to the Losers Club is severely lacking in the film and nearly non-existent, as opposed to the book and the miniseries. But if I'm being honest, with the exception of Bill and Beverly and maybe Ben, none of the Losers Club had appropriate amount of screen time or writing to help develop their characters in a more deeper sense, other than, hey, we're kids just like you, or just like you were at one time. We say bad words and we laugh at naughty jokes, and we too are afraid of the things that go bump in the night, and our parents don't understand us, and only our friends can be there to help us through bad times. Isn't that relatable? In the novel, Stan's first encounter with it was during his favorite outdoor activity and hobby, that is bird watching. But in the film, his first encounter with it is in the form of the Painted Lady. In the novel, Ben's first encounter with it is on his way home from school, and the encounter could have been perceived as almost a little tiny bit friendly. But in the film, he first encounters it in the form of a headless child with eggs in the lower levels of a library. Yeah. Bill encounters it several times in the novel, in far more scarier ways than in the film, in my opinion. However, in the film, his first encounter with it is in his parents' flooded basement, with Pennywise using his brother's dead body as a puppet, which was pretty effective. And Richie first encounters it in the form of a Paul Bunyan statue. The only first encounters that stayed true in the film from the book are Beverly and Eddie's, who was splattered with blood from the bathroom sink and chased by a leper near the Neibold house respectively. It remains to be unknown whether Richie's first encounter in the second film, in the form of a flashback I suppose, will be in the form of a CGI animated Paul Bunyan statue. But, without a doubt, I'm sure my theory will be true, that Mike's encounter with it will be drastically different from the book. My fourth theory is that Mike will die at the hands of adult Henry Bowers, but that Henry will die too. In the book, and I don't quite remember the miniseries, but definitely in the book, Mike ended up in hospital after being attacked at the library by Henry Bowers, who was blamed for the murders of his two best friends and the majority of the killings in the town, and then was committed to a mental asylum. With its help and under its influence, Henry escapes the confines of the asylum and seeks to kill the remaining members of the Losers Club, with Mike being his first target, and he thought he mortally wounded and killed him that night in the library, but he failed. Mike's death was then going to be by the hands of a hospital nurse under its influence, but this time I think it'll be Henry, because like the first film, Henry nearly killed Mike in the basement of the Neibold house. I have a feeling that it'll be much of the same thing, but that Mike will die violently defending his friends against Henry, who may be empowered or strengthened by its powers. And my last theory is that instead of Eddie, it will be either Bill, Ben, or Richie who die during the final fight. The most unsurprising thing would be if it is Bill or Ben who die trying to defend or save Beverly, because both of them love her. Or Richie dying trying to save Eddie from its clutches. In the book, Eddie's the one who dies to save Richie by spraying inhaler fluid into its eyes and then having his arm devoured and bleeding out. But who knows? Maybe it'll be the other way around this time. Either way, along with my theory of Mike and, of course, Stan, it'll be either Bill, Ben, or Richie who will not survive. But Eddie will.